Yay. Thank you, Danielle, for hanging out with me today and sharing your story. I'm
Absolutely.
super, super excited. Really, my goal with these interviews is to share the ups, the downs, the good times, the tough times, the lessons, and really just the journey that you've gone through that really has brought you to where you are now and helped you build a thriving photography business and reach six figures from your passion. So I'm really excited to share that story because I know it's amazing and I know it's going to be really relatable for people. So just to start out, let's just I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Tell us where you're located, married, single, kids, all of those good tips.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Elle Sanders. We're located in the Washington area. Most people know Washington based off of like Seattle. We're about an hour lower than there around the Tacoma area. My husband and I have two kids, and yeah, I've been doing photography for about 6 years now.
Yeah, love it. Do you remember the first time you picked up your camera?
I do actually. As far as like an actual like picking it up and like working with clients, that 6 years ago, it was a friend who wanted to have maternity photos done, and I was like, hey, I'll do them for you. And it was that simple. And we went for it. They turned out really good. And then I had another person ask, and it just kind of, grew from there. And then just some more self education and really, understanding my camera better, and obviously just like the ins and outs of photography more. And it just kind of, it grew.
Yeah. So when your friend reached out to you to do maternity, did you already have a camera? Did you have an interest in photography or?
Yeah, I think I've always had an interest in photography. Like I liked taking pictures when I was a teenager. It was super fun. I was always really interested in like my friends who were in the photography clubs and things like that. Where I was like, that's really neat. And I always just enjoyed taking photos. And then I had a nice little camera that my husband had bought me for Christmas one year because I was like, oh, I really wanted a new camera. And it was just a little, point and shoot style camera, but I still had a good time with it. It was fun.
Yeah, awesome. And so you did the maternity shoot, you
Mhm.
said, and then was that like, this is fun? Like what happened there?
Yeah, so I mean, I did the maternity shoot, and like I was like, oh, I hope these turn out okay. And I started looking at them, and I was like, oh, that's actually really good. Oh, I really like that one. So it kind of piqued my interest in it more, and I started researching after that, kind of different posing and things like that. Because I was like, oh, I wish I would have done some more poses. I wonder what I could do better next time. And so it threw me into like the educational portion of it, where I just wanted to learn more um, after I'd done that session.
Yeah, awesome. And then what happened next? Like what was the point at which you were like, okay, I think I actually might want to make an income at this?
Yeah, I think I did her photos, and then so we were friends, but we worked together, and so other coworkers had seen them. And they're like, "Oh, I want mine done." And by the time I knew it, I had like four or five people who had scheduled with me, and I did not expect that. And they're like, no, her pictures are so pretty. Like, I want ours done too. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I really enjoy doing this. This is super fun. This is like a really great creative outlet because my job at the time was in medical assisting. So very analytical, very much this is how your day goes. And it definitely was more structure than I think I really wanted in my life. I really wanted that creative feel. Um, and so after I had those, other four or five people, I was like, I'm gonna open a website, and I'm just gonna do this. And I just kind of did like the wing it thing for my hobby for a while. But I really, really, really started taking it seriously, I would say about 3 years ago. And that's where I dove really hard into like making sure it was marketing, that I had a group, Facebook stuff, all the things. But yeah.
What was the catalyst for that 3 years ago?
What was the catalyst for that? Like what kind of like threw me into it at that point? Um, I just really was enjoying it. I was like, I'm happier doing my photography than I am doing my day job. And I think that's really what it was for me, is that like I enjoyed what I was doing. I had the passion for it at that point. It was something where I was like, I look forward to getting up and going and doing a photo shoot versus going to work and taking vitals on patients. So yeah, I think it was the passion that just, that's when I was like, this is it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think when you know, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
was there any fear around quitting the job, or was it just like, nope, I know I've got this?
You know, there was actually a lot of fear around quitting the job. So I had dabbled in like some MLM stuff with some essential oils, and my husband was like, "Hey, another hobby," And so I kind of got a lot of pushback from him about it being a hobby, and I'm like, "Okay, but it's not just a hobby anymore. This is very much something that I'm passionate about, and I can really see myself going and doing this full time." And he was like, "I'll support you, but like you have to take this seriously." So I'm like, all right, I'll take it seriously. And sure enough, like, we just kind of built on that and started doing wedding shows and really diving hard into it. And he saw that I was trying really hard to make it more of a career path than just a hobby. And so that's kind of like where the support came in. And then he was like, okay, go ahead. If you want to quit your job, quit your job. So
I love that. So you started with maternity. Did you just shoot everything? What did you niche? Like, kind of tell me what that was, what that process was.
yeah, it was just an everything kind of a feel. I had another friend who was a photographer, and we kind of teamed up a little bit for a while, just like, supporting each other. And she was like, "Well, I can't do this one. Do you want it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." So, I mean, I shot everything from maternity to families to babies to weddings to engagement, real estate. I mean, you name it. But we definitely honed in about around 2 years ago. I decided to dabble in boudoir photography, and you watch these women cry on your couch because they're like, "I can't believe how beautiful I am." And you're like, holy crap. I just instilled that confidence in somebody. And I think for me, that was just so empowering. And I like felt fulfilled in what I was doing at that point. It wasn't just fun for pretty pictures and, I'm passionate about this. It was like I changed someone's world.
Mm.
Um, And so I still dabbled, I still dabbled, I still dabbled. And then this last year, I really said, okay, we're going for it. We're gonna go boudoir. So that's kind of how it happened.
I love that. I think there's always a journey for, I mean, I shot everything when I started, and most photographers I interview, they're all the same. They didn't know originally, and it's almost like a journey that you go on to really find that one genre that you connect with. And sometimes it's one or two, but no, I think that's very normal for everyone to do that. And I think that's great to try everything and then see what you connect with the most. And sometimes that changes over the years too, depending on what phase of life that you're in. So, what would you say was the toughest part of building your photography business?
I think the toughest part was really just having structure. Um, I think, it was kind of like, oh, well, I'll try something like this and then we'll try something like that. But there was no like sound structure and vision on what needed to happen next. It was just very much kind of going with the flow of things. And then we did a lot of like shoot and burn. So it was very much like you get your digitals with your product package kind of, or like, inside your session fee. And so we just weren't really making a lot of money doing it. And so it's like, okay, something's got to change. Like if this is really going to be a career path, there's got to be structure. There's got to be a way for us to make more money with this. Like we need to have like a set way that we do it and emails. And so having like the structure and the platform and the foundation, instead of just winging it per email per client, I think really is what changed our business. And I'm glad I found it because it was not working before that.
Yeah. So, what did you do? What did you end up doing? How did you find help or?
Yeah. So I found a photographer who was doing mentorship classes. And I followed along with that for a while. And then I actually connected with another local photographer who was like, hey, I used a specific program. And so just through networking, I was able to get my hands on the structure I was looking for. And I mean, it made all the world of a difference, you know, having everything kind of all packaged and neatly designed. So it was like, okay, great, I can implement this. And then that's just kind of how it worked. But I started off just researching and finding somebody, and then networking.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, technically, that is the fastest way is to find somebody who's already done it, and
Sure.
emulate that and like a proven system that already works. What would you say was the biggest thing about the structure that just made the biggest difference for you?
I think for us, as far as the structure, it was the sales, the sales piece of it, and really knowing that, like, for us, like with the shoot and burn, like, okay, they got their digital images and that was it. But the reality is that nobody prints their albums by themselves. They just don't. Nobody goes and prints something beautiful for their wall. They just don't. And so I knew I wanted to provide those things. So I think having that sales structure really is what changed everything for me.
Yeah, gotcha. And so, what were you averaging, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah,
averaging before and then after?
great question, actually. So before, when I was doing shoot and burn, my average sale was about $275.
Mhm.
My after, now that we are like fully implementing the IPS sales structure that we have, um, we are now averaging, let's see, last month, my average sale was $3,000 per client.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's
That's just
night and day.
beautiful. Yeah. So for anybody out watching out there, if they're stuck, they're like, hey, like I don't understand, like how can I get out of where I'm at? I think this is why I do these interviews is I feel like there's so much information out there and there is a lot, but just to listen to what other photographers have gone through and really hear their journey and what made the difference for them um, is huge. So I love that you shared that for sure. What's one thing that you wish you had known when you started your photography business?
Great question. One thing I wish I would have known is how much it is actually a business. It's not just doing photos. I'd say 15% of what I do is actually shooting. The rest of it is administrative work. And like, there's a lot. So I think that would have been really helpful to kind of to have viewed it differently when I first started. And if I had viewed it more as a business than just as, oh, I'm going to go take pretty pictures, I think I would have, um, we would have seen the business go bigger faster had I really viewed it that way from the start.
Yeah, I like that. So what exactly would you say is viewing it as a business? Was there something specific that you would have done differently? I mean, I want to give like a little bit more of dirt
Sure.
under there. If somebody's sitting there and like, okay, well, how do I view this as a business? Like explain it to me a little bit more.
For sure. So like really having like a strategic marketing plan in place, I think was probably the biggest thing for me. And then I'm not a money person. Like having an accountant take care of everything for me every month is like gold. Um, so some of the things that like that, and then like I have a virtual assistant, but before I had her, my workload wasn't as big as it is now. Making sure to have consistency in posting things on social media, and having content out there for other people. um, uh, just being really on top of making sure emails go out. So having workflows in place so that emails are being sent out and it's not like, oops, I forgot to send this, making sure to get back to people quickly. All of those things I feel like in place, and viewing it in that way of going, okay, like I have somebody to handle all my money stuff for me. I have a strategic marketing plan in place. I have a website that is where it should be. I've got everything that's going on social media posts, but it's like really having that structure, and looking at it like that instead of going, oh, I'll post once in a while, or, well, maybe my numbers are in order with the accountant at the end of the year when we do taxes. But that, I think that's kind of what I mean by it.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great insight for sure. Because you were spot on when you said owning a photography business is about 15% of it's actually doing shoots.
Right.
Like the rest of it is, like you said, administrative work, the business side of things, and basically having conversations and building relationships with your clients, like serving your clients. And that's doing emails, that's responding, that's confirming, that's doing consultations, that's doing reveals, that's, ordering products, that's all of the things that go into it. Shooting is such a small part of it. And when you're a creative and you're really excited and passionate, that's typically the thing that you want to spend the most time on. So I love that you brought up that, because it's so true, is once you decide you want to take your passion and make an income from it, one of the best keys that's really going to save you a lot of heartache is understanding that that's a very small portion of it if you
Yeah.
want to actually make good money from it.
100%.
I love
100%.
that. What would you say? Well, okay, what would you say then is the part of your business that you spend the most time on now? Obviously, you're outsourcing some of it.
Yes. Yeah, we do. We've outsourced quite a bit actually, which makes my life so much easier. So I would say the thing that I probably spend the most time on is client follow-up, whether that's, making sure that emails are going out or doing consultations or the ordering appointments, obviously the shoot time itself, but we really work on building those relationships through our emails and making sure that they are going out and that we are in communication, taking payments. I mean, really it's managing the clients is what I probably spend the bulk of my time on, outside of shooting for sure.
You would say like customer service.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's great, because I think that's the thing I think that sets businesses apart. Like
Hmm.
in the world of photography, they say, oh, there's so much competition. And how do you stand out? I think you nailed it. It's like customer
Yeah.
service, paying attention to your clients, making sure they're getting emails on time, making sure you're replying quickly, making sure, I always say, under promise, over deliver.
Yes. 100%.
What do you feel like is the biggest mistake that you see other photographers making as they're trying to build their business? Being a photographer that obviously built a business, you can kind of look back and go, oh gosh, this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, even looking back on my own experience, I really think it's not taking it seriously, honestly. Not having a plan in place before starting to implement something. Um, that would probably be it right there. Not having a plan in place before you implement something. So it's one thing to put out an ad, but do you have the response stuff set up, after it? Okay, well, what happens after they respond? What's your plan for that? Like, how are you going to reach out? And then, okay, well, now that you've reached out, like, how do you get them on the phone? Or, how are you going to follow up with them? Like, how are you tracking your follow up? So I think really, like, if you don't have a plan in place before you implement something, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because then you're just going to be trying to do it off the top of your head. And it's never going to be the same where you can track results and know what's working for you and what's not.
Oh, I love that you brought up tracking results. That's something that most creatives, it's not in our forte to
No, for
really
sure.
want to look at the numbers and track, but huge key for business, for anybody watching, is if you look at a business and how successful it is, it's only as successful as much as you track what's working, what's not working, and being able to make tweaks. So yeah, I love that you brought that up. That's a great point.
It's been probably one of my biggest pain points, because I'm terrible at it, but like I try really, really hard to like, okay, so let's make sure we put all this in here, because otherwise I'm going to forget. And okay, did I make sure to respond to that person? Because it really does, like, it keeps me on track, like, having that ability to go back and look at something and going, okay, well, what's working? Like, I've changed a little bit of something here. How is that, affecting the client? What kind of a response am I getting out of it? And oh my gosh, it really does. It makes a world of a difference.
Yeah. I mean, we obviously do that with marketing and on websites. Is We change one thing at a time. I'm just going to give a little tip to anybody watching. Change one thing at a time. If it's a word, it's a picture, it's a headline, one thing, and then you give it at least 2 to 4 weeks. And then you look and you see, are your results, getting a more positive? Are you getting a more positive result, a negative result, or, neutral? If it's neutral, no big deal. Like, go ahead and leave it if you want. If it's negative, obviously you want to remove it. And if it's positive, then hey, this is actually improving and getting me where I want to go. So, yeah, that's exactly. And it's not the most fun thing to do because it takes time. It's one of those things where you have to sit and wait and it don't get an instant gratification, and you're like, hey, I want to change my website. It's semi working, but I want to improve it. You kind of want to go in and like do an overhaul. When
Mm-hmm.
you go in and do an overhaul, you have no idea what you did that might have caused a negative thing or some things that might have been positive. And then you
Right.
don't have any like, ground base of like, okay, this is works. So add this little thing or, tweak this. So yeah, that's a great tip that if anybody's watching that you to use it, definitely use it. What would you say are the top 3 best resources that have helped you along the way? This can be books, podcasts, mentors, workshops, anything. And you're welcome to name drop anything in the sense of, I want these to be a place where people can be like, okay, cool, I want to go check that out. Maybe that will be helpful for me too.
Sure, absolutely. So we started following, so I mentioned that I had started following some photographers who were giving out mentorship programs. So the first person that I followed was Sal Sincata. He offers the Level Up mentorship program. And it was super helpful because he does shoot everything. So for photographers who aren't like specific to boudoir, and I wasn't at the moment, um, it was really helpful to kind of go, okay, so I can do all that, like for seniors, families, engagements, weddings. I mean, he literally does everything, I think, except for newborn photography. But I don't know if he does boudoir. He never mentioned it specifically. But it was really helpful to kind of go through his stuff. But for him, it was more like overview mentorship. I don't feel like it got really nitty gritty into specifics. So I was like, I need more than this. Like for me, I needed more. Some photographers do fantastic with him. So it was a great stepping stone. Then we ended up moving into Jen Bruno Smith's The High Roller Club. And hers is very much an all-inclusive package. Like, here we go, business in a box. Just implement it step by step. Because if you get ahead of yourself, again, we're not preparing our plan for our implementation. So definitely step by step. And I mean, like, it was game changer for my business. It really was. It was amazing. And one of the things that her person who helps with it, Humberto Garcia, said, he was like, look at profit first. So one of my favorite books is Profit First because it really helps set up our financial structure in our accounts. And I never thought in my life I'd have like 5 checking accounts for a business, but it makes sense to keep everything separate and in their own little spaces, and you can really see it. So Profit First is an incredible book to help really structure the finances as well.
Hey, love them. All 3 are great. And I'll try to remember to link those for everybody watching in the description below. Hands down, yes, we do a version of Profit First as well, like more of a custom version, but I highly recommend as well. I second that. That's a great, it really helps you get a handle on money. And because a lot of times, like, I mean, I've been coaching for quite a few years, and one of the things I hear from photographers is, I feel like I'm making a lot of money, but I have it's not there at the end of the year. Like, where did it go? And this gives you really like the power and control of like, oh, okay, this is where this goes. This is where this goes. This is my profit. Like, these are my expenses. Gives you a real understanding and more insight into money management so that you come out on top and not going scratching your head like, what just happened? I just worked my booty off this entire year and I don't feel like I have anything to show for it. So I would say that's a really great tip for sure. Okay, so one last question. What is one piece of advice that you would give to other photographers who are just starting out building their business or currently building their photography business and just like trying to get to that next level, but just having a hard time?
Don't undervalue yourself. 100%. I think as creatives, we look at our stuff and we are our most harsh critic. So we look at it and we go, oh, maybe it's not good enough. But not a lot has changed from last year to this year with my shooting capability or education. And I went from making $275 a client to $3,000 a client. Don't undervalue yourself. I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice. And if you're just starting out, don't price yourself so low that people are going to think, oh, she's cheap. Because there are people who have no problem paying for it. And if you're in the process of building the business, I jump, go for it. Like IPS is incredible. It is absolutely life-changing for your business. I would never go back. It's just absolutely amazing what a difference it made in our business and our ability to really have a flourishing company, which is just incredible.
I love that. So tell me, I'm just going to dive in a little bit more on this last question. Tell me a little bit more about IPS. What do you feel like has changed? And obviously, anybody who doesn't know what IPS is, it's in-person sales.
Yeah.
I personally like to call it in-person service, but the technical term is in-person sales.
So kind of like what the difference is.
I mean, like what do you feel like? Yeah, what's the difference for you? What made the difference?
Yeah. So I think for me, like I would do photo shoots for people and like they might be repeat clients even. And I'm like, hey, what did you end up printing from your photo session? They're like, oh, it's on my computer. Okay. So for me, like I mean, definitely looked at it from a business perspective of like, I could really be making a lot more money doing this a different way. But it almost hurt my feelings that they just had these digital photos and they weren't doing anything with it. I'm like, dang, what was the point? And I can say from my own personal experience, I never printed my wedding album. Didn't happen. I've been married for 7 years. I still do not have a wedding album because I got digitals only for my wedding pictures. So, the in-person sales, I mean, it's kind of more all-inclusive where your services are separate and the product is purchased separately, including digital images. And for me, it was a way to really be able to put art in people's homes. And it's like, if you love this, then let's print it. Like, let's get you some bedside art. Let's get a wall art piece. Like, great, you've got your digitals just in case, but like you need an album. Like this is something for you to cherish and to look back at. And yeah, I think that really was what it was for me. I knew personally I never printed anything. So let's do it for our clients, instead of them having to figure it out.
I think that's a great point because I think there's an underlying psychology and there's something underlying to that. I think it's great for photographers to want their clients to have prints. I personally have a little bit of a different view on it. I think we need to serve our clients and give them what they want. What we want for them is not necessarily what they want for themselves. So being really good at listening, which
Sure.
is not what you were saying. I'm just putting that out there. I
100%.
actually think digitals are great because we live in a digital age. But I think that the missing piece that I'm listening to what you're saying is even you're a person who valued having an album or perhaps wall art, and your photographer did not take the time, most likely, to
Nope.
educate you and to take your hand and say, hey, here are all the options.
Right.
You don't have to, any of them are an option. You can just choose digitals, but here is an album and this is quality. This is why it's quality. This is why it's so great. Here's another option. Okay, you don't know what size of wall art to get. I'm more than happy to take a picture of your wall. We can see it before we even order it. I think that actually might be the missing part, is not necessarily that people don't want albums and they only want digitals and they don't want wall art. I think it's the gap of them not understanding, I don't know where to go to get good wall art.
Right.
I don't know where to go to get an album. I've never designed an album in my life. Like, how do I even do that? And it's that overwhelm that creates the gap of like, okay, I'll do that someday. And
Yep.
then someday becomes never because
Right.
it's so overwhelming. And whereas a photographer, yes, you do make more money, but I think it's also just because it, I don't know, maybe not just because, but it's because you're adding service, you're adding value to the experience by hand holding the clients, and taking them through each step and going, hey, these are the options. And know exactly where to order them. I know exactly how to make it perfect. And
Right.
I will do that for you. And then you obviously, as a photographer, get paid. So it's almost like IPS is almost like adding an additional service to your
Mhm.
business.
100%.
And then you're getting paid for providing that expertise and that service and doing the work of finding the best places to get it, and you're getting paid to be educated to educate your clients. If that makes
Yes.
sense.
No, absolutely. Yes, you stole the words right out of my brain for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I kind of wanted to clarify because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to make more money. And I'm like, you can totally. I think IPS is about that. But I also think that it ties back into understanding why you make more money that way. And then that also gives you just more understanding of why your business works the way it works.
I love it. No,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Awesome. And you have a couple of kiddos, correct?
Yes, I do.
I wanted to ask another, I said that was the last question and then, of course. But what's it like being a mom and owning a business? Like, how do you find balance? What are your tips for other moms who want to, dive into business and are trying to, do both?
For sure. So that's a really good question. I think there's a constant like shift in trying to find balance for things because things are just so ever changing. Um, we're full homeschool program for our two kids this year, so that's been a challenge in itself. But I think really finding the balance in it is going, okay, what are my work days,
Mm.
and sticking to those work days. And then I do a really good job of like checking my emails first thing in the morning, getting emails sent out that need to be each day, but my work days are my work days, so that when I come home, everything's shut down and I'm there for the kids. We want to watch a movie, we can do that. So I think it's really just about setting boundaries, you know, and saying, this is my personal time.
I love that. And that's something I've talked about before is I love you basically, if I was your coach, I would have told you exactly what you just said is when you're with your work, be 100% with your work. And when you're with your family and kids or friends, be 100% there. Because if you try to mix them together, then neither of them gets 100% of your focus and you never get anything done, or your kids don't feel like you're actually there with them and getting the attention that they need because your focus is fractured. So
Right.
I love that you brought that up. Awesome. So much gold in this interview. Thank you for taking time. I know you're crazy busy. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks again for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Bye, love.
Bye.